over it. Your name?
Ray Smith.
Ray Smith. Where are you from, Ray Smith?
I'm from Brownsville, Texas.
Where have you been the last decade?
I've been in all over the place. I have a house in Cuernavaca, Mexico, and I have studios in New York, and I have a ranch here in South Texas. So I kind of jump between all three places.
You've been painting for 40?
40, let's say I was 13 and I'm now 63, 50 years.
50 years painting. I can only imagine
50 years kind of like, knowing that I was making paintings and
sculptures.
Like that. Well, yeah, but I didn't know what those things were earlier. Let's say it wasn't until I was probably about 13 years old that I understood clearly that there was such a thing as an artist and that there was something, people did that. But I was making drawings and things like that from the time I was 8 years old. So I was kind of guided into this direction automatically, let's say, from birth.
What's different from when you started to making a painting or making a piece of art now?
What's the difference between that, let's say, as a child?
As your earlier work, when you knew you were already painting, you knew that what you were doing, you were working on your first show compared to working on a show now.
Well, let's just put it this way. When I was in first grade, I remember my first experience about how your hands could translate something onto a piece of paper, which would be, I suppose, like, drawing from nature, from live things. And I noticed that my head would communicate with my hand, and my eyes would communicate with my hand, and so therefore it was like a direct translation. So I think that I actually made up for a certain type of dyslexia by drawing. So I learned more from drawing than I did from, what was being taught to me in school. So as long as the let's say biology, I was good at biology because they had a lot of things that I could draw from inside the book. And in drawing the things inside the book, you kind of bring them into you. That's why it's called drawing, right? Because you're pulling it in.
How does it feel to be back to Brownsville with this show? And how's it been? How do you feel the reception has been? You feel good about it? So you're closing today and celebrating?
Yeah, I think that the thing that I feel, this time, let's say, discovering it and getting to know more of the artists and things like that, and reading more about, Chicano culture and the writers and the poets and all of the other kind of stuff that in a sense I didn't know so much about, because I grew up in Mexico City and kind of in New York, so there was a gap there. But I realized that the landscape that I created in a way that was going to be the landscape of my work, the sort of imaginary space from which all of these things emerged, is here. In other words, it's physically here. It actually exists. And that I find that, I have a lot of brethren down here that have this discussion about whether or not they're Mexican or whether they're American, or what portion of that culture did they get and which one did they get on the other side, and all of the sort of like conflicts of that and all of the sort of virtues of that. And so now I feel a lot more at home in a sense, because I realize that imaginary landscape that I invented, or thought that I had invented, is actually physically here.
Give us an insight on the Julian Schnabel Basquiat days. Maybe a story you remember. Maybe you were at a bar with Julian. Maybe you were at a show.
No. I mean, what ended up happening is that my cousin, who was from Brownsville or here, had died in a terrible car accident, and I took my uncle to Germany to distract him. Okay, his father. And so when I went to a show in Berlin, Germany, I showed him a painting of Julian Schnabel, and he said, "I know a Schnabel." And as it turned out, Julian Schnabel had grown up in Brownsville, and so he knew Julian Schnabel's dad. So at that particular moment, I knew I wanted to get back to New York City, but I didn't know how I was going to get there, you know, or how I was going to kind of get into the world that I was fascinated by. And the next thing you know is I'm in New York and I'm at parties with Julian Schnabel and Andy Warhol and Jean-Michel Basquiat and a whole other plethora of artists that I had admired for several years. So in a way, it came back to Brownsville, if you know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
So in other words, I thought I was going to have to just jump into New York and tan verdes. Anyway, so in a way, it always kind of comes home, you know. In a way, for however far you've gone, you always sort of like get back to where you came from.
What are the plans now being back? Aside from was a great show. What are your future plans in being here in this area?
Well, I think that, you know, basically we're creating a kind of residency between the three studios in Mexico, here at the ranch, and in Cuernavaca, Mexico. And so basically what I'd like to do is create a foundation that has all three cultures, you know, the Mexican culture, the American culture via New York, and the frontera culture, which is this multicultural, multi-languaged, multi-dreamy, you know, kind of no man's land, which I think is a real virtue to it, because I think that as artists and as dreamers, it's much better to have a very flexible identity. And everybody here can speak several languages and imitate several languages, or several accents even. They can tell the difference between a Mexican from Mexico City and one from Monterrey and the one from the Valley, right? And they can do the same looking north, and so this is the third culture.
What is somebody you look up to? What is an artist? Maybe an artist you looked up to back then, and who are artists you look up to now? Actually,
I have to tell you that I love all of the act and the being of artists. You know what I'm saying? So I'm kind of a pushover. I sort of like it all. You know, I've gotten past my capacities of judgment anymore. I don't know if you saw that movie of Basquiat that Julian Schnabel did, and at one point there's a scene where Andy's painting with Jean-Michel, and Jean-Michel makes a line on a painting, and then Andy walks up to it and goes, "God, I don't know what's good anymore."
That's pretty good. That's pretty good. Just like him.
No idea what's good or bad anymore. I don't have any judgment.
Nice. Yeah.
You understand? I think that art is a type of testimony, a human testimony, and that one thing that actually shows you that it's very possibly really worth it to be human.
What is you know, when you do a show, what is the message you want a viewer, a visitor to take when they leave your show?
I actually think that, you know, that every single one of the shows are produced by a particular type of energy. You know what I'm saying? And so that energy really is being created inside the studio. It's the way that things kind of like sit in the room or move around and in relationship to each other that goes generating a kind of new voice for every single one of the shows. So I think that the thing that makes me nervous or makes me concerned about where the show is going is that sort of reinvention of that particular piece. So I think that all of the pieces are active at all times, and at least that's what thrills me, and I hope that the audience would know that this is a reiteration of maybe years of work, but a completely new energy.
What do you like the most about Brownsville?
The music.
Yeah.
No.
What do you come to see? Where do you go to eat? When you come to Brownsville, what is it that you do? Besides the museum.
Well, you know, first of all, I spend a lot of time out at the ranch, learning things that I have no idea how I missed them all these years. You know, like, why is the bark on the mesquite tree
And
that
this
way?
is the Ituria ranch.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so when I go there, I just realize that, you know, that it's so. I mean, this is my birthplace, if you know what I'm saying.
But,
and I think that if I remember,
there's a big gap between Brownsville and the Ituria ranch, in a way.
Yeah.
What is it that you like in specific about Brownsville?
all of my memories of my childhood. So when you say that it's different to me,
Like maybe the downtown area, something?
well, yeah. I mean, I love downtown, and I love all of the, you know, the memories of canoeing in resakas and running into, like, you know, nests of swallows. And,
Do you have a
and running
specific-
into crocodiles? You know, I mean, it was all different types of things that just as I drive around Brownsville, you know, it fills me with all of those memories of what my grandfather would say about it, and the stories I would hear from one side of the other, you know, that were contemporary stories and things that were happening at that particular moment, or things that had happened to great grandparents or tíos, or, you know,
I have to ask you.
fíjate, ya supiste que le pasó a ese vato allá, you know, all of the different things that just would go on, and the simplicity of the people, right, and then kind of, you know, just everybody seems to be sort of cheery. That's what I love.
Yeah, for the most part.
Yeah, well, for the most part, yeah. You know, I mean, it's also, you know, a gossipy town and all this other stuff. But I sort of enjoy all of that. You know, I mean, coming back from New York, you sort of enjoy a particular type of, like, just simplicity.
You've obviously seen the changes, the growth. Something like SpaceX coming into town. What do you think about things like that?
Look, it's just so bizarre for me, because we used to go to Port Isabel, and there were some kind of like dry lake beds that were like salt flats that were kind of on Highway 100 or right down there. And I used to go there and I'd make model rockets, okay, that I'd buy at Mac's Hobby Shop. It was probably before your time, but I'd buy model rockets and model airplanes, and we would go out to those salt flats. So we could, you know, you could launch these rockets and watch it come down, and they were, you know, you could find them, so to speak, if you were launching them somewhere around here. They'd land on top of an oak tree or an ebony tree or something like that. You could do it. So out there was just desert. So we would go out there to do that, and we were launching rockets, model rockets, and somehow, you know, at that time, this was the 60s and 70s when the space program was starting. And so, to me, it's a very bizarre thing to see that real rockets are taking off right where we used to launch our model rockets. So, it's almost like a deja vu all over again, you know what I'm saying? It's almost like it was something that I saw as a child, and now here it is. So, in this kind of goofy way, it makes perfect sense.
One more question. Legacy. What would you like to leave impressed in the world after you're gone? Let's just say.
Well, look, I figured that almost everything that I've made, unless it gets destroyed or burnt or rotten or whatever, which I've watched happen already, all of it. You know, you just, I don't know. I think that if you could leave that energy behind, you know, that's kind of what I think that I would, you know, that's what I'm putting in the warehouse. If you understand what I'm saying, that's what I'm putting.
Materials could dissolve it, but that energy, if it stays around, you're right.
Yeah, I think
it could live on forever.
Yeah, I mean, well, not forever, because forever is a long time. Do you get my point? So in other words, everything will transform. I mean, in other words, I do know that nothing lasts forever. It all is constantly moving, and it's all transforming. And so you just hope that the work has the remaining energy that, in a sense, was done when it was first created, and that it continues to grant testimony. How's that?
More than perfect. Let me get a shot with me and you, okay? See if we can get it. Nice to meet you.
My pleasure.
Thank you
man.
for having the show here again.
It's my great pleasure.
Coming back to Brownsville, and like I said, you've been a big influence since 2006. Followed your work ever since. I'm glad you were chosen for the first show for the museum, and I'm glad you're back. And wish you nothing but great success.
Well, how about
and love.
an
Thank you so much, man. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely, man.
All right,
Take care.
here's for the skull knuckles. There we go.
Exactly, the skull.
All right. Thanks a lot, man. Appreciate it.